I'm Dr. Francis Yahia, and I wanted to teach you a little bit about the mystical enneagram and using the numerology to maximize your energy for the year 2022. What I teach you today, you can use for every single future year as well. Now, the mystical enneagram is different than the enneagram used for psychological and personality tests. The origins of the enneagram are very mystical. They go far back into Sufism and many, many generations past, where it was actually hidden as an esoteric and a mystical tool. And then the Armenian philosopher Gurdjieff sort of revived it and brought it to the West. And since then, it's had many iterations. I just want to specify, I'm going to talk about the mystical aspects of it. If you are into the Enneagram, and of course, you can use this information in addition to the personality profiling as well. So the universal law that we're going to focus on is the law of rhythm. The law of rhythm states that everything has a season, everything has a cycle. So just like we know, fall, spring, summer, winter, we know the seasons in the order it's coming, and we know that there's a chronological order to the years, 2022, 2023. We ourselves also follow the law of rhythm. And that rhythm or that pattern is hidden in sacred geometry. And we have that same pattern that nature has in flowers or pine cones. In order for the growth spiral to occur, we have the same thing in our soul's pattern. So part of the numerology piece that we'll do will be for you to identify your soul's pattern according to your numbers. So a little symbology. I have a saying, triangle plus square equals circle. That is basically to sum up the entire universe in 3 shapes. The Enneagram follows suit. You've got the outer circle, you've got the inner triangle, and instead of a square, it's a hectagon, it's a 6-sided figure. Whether it's a rectangle, square, hectagon, heptagon, octagon, all of those squared figures are representative of the body. The mind is always representative of a triangle, and the spirit is always represented as a circle. So in symbolism, whether it's archetypes, whether it's dreams, whether it's mythology, when you see these 3 shapes, and remember the square in this particular case is the hectagon, but it can follow suit with any of the 4, I call them 4 plus figures. So rectangle or square on, we're always relating that to the body. Therefore, this Enneagram is a mind, body, spirit medicine. It's mind, body, spirit pattern. The number sequence teaches you how to work on your mind, your body, your spirit simultaneously, and more importantly, according to your numerology of the year, which year you should be focusing specifically on which aspect of your spiritual work. So Galileo said, the book of nature is written in the language of mathematics. Mathematics is linked to everything in the universe. There is a pattern in nature, in the universe, even down to our cellular structure. In quantum physics, we have isolated or identified that there is a pattern in the numbers. And we as humans follow this same law. So what is the pattern? The pattern is 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1. Now you can do this in 2 ways. I'm simply going to show you this quickie way so that you can string it along. And then when we take it back to your application, you can see. If you take 1 divided by 7, 2 divided by 7, 3 divided by 7, 7 are the number of planes in the universe. 7 is a very mystical number when we're talking about mysticism, symbology, and the way the universe is structured. So if you do just basic math, you're going to see this pattern, 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1. So this number sequence out of the 9 numbers of the Enneagram are going to represent your body. So most of the time, most of the years, When you do your numerology, you're here to work on your body. What does that mean? The body houses desires. The body houses the shadow. The body houses the flaws, the imperfections, the judgments, the deadly sins. So in order for us to be crafted closer to a circle, more whole, we need to do two things. The circle is representative of the spirit. We need to work on our mind, which I'll talk about those numbers in a moment, and we need to work on our body. So out of the 9 years, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them are dedicated to specifically working on our judgments, desires, passions, physical. Now, this does not mean go to the gym and work out. That could be part of it. It has to do with your shadow work. It has to do with being embodied, not trying to always be transcendent. This has to be with being embodied and realizing that you have to learn to love the vehicle in which the soul dwells. Now, if you fall on a 3, 6, 9 year, then you're going to be working on your thoughts. There's 3 types of mental energies. They're called the Mahagunas. 3 has to do with Rajas. Rajas is action, doing, going out and building something, creating something. The year 6 has to do with Tamas. Tamas is inertia. It might make you feel like you're stuck, that you're stable, that you're lazy, that there's nothing for you to do. Let's say that you have no money to invest in your business and you just have to kind of sit still. And then the number 9, which is the universal number, and it's the full circle until you end the new that cycle and start a new one with 1, is Sattva. Sattva means purity and truth. If you add up all of the previous 8 numbers, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8, you will get broken down into Pythagoras numbers 1 to 9, the number 9. 9 is endings, wholeness. If you do tarot, it's the number of the hermit. And the hermit is a wise man who has now closed 1 cycle and is moving into new beginnings with gained wisdom. So every time you go around the enneagram with these numbers, you're closing a cycle. So if you're in a 3, 6, 9, and we'll do the new numbers for 2022, it's going to be more of a mental year, identifying what level of consciousness are you going to show up in the world. If you're in a 3, you're going to show up in a very active, just a lower level consciousness. It's not that it's low level, but it's more attuned to doing and creating and making things happen. The 6 is more of a stability or an inertia. There's nothing for you to do. Part of understanding spirituality is when to be. And then if you're in a 9 year, you're completing, and you're going to go back and look at what you did in the 3 year, what you didn't do in the 6 year, and the 9 year sort of completes that cycle for you. If you are in a 1, a 4, a 2, an 8, a 5, or a 7 year, it is very clear that you're going to be working in the body, embodiment, confronting your shadow, looking at judgments, desires, and how to control the things in the body. So that's what we're going to see in the numbers. So a little bit of the cosmology of this tool, which goes back to basically my simplicity of the cosmology of the universe. Triangle plus square equals circle. The enneagram houses all of that. That's why it is such a mystical tool. The circle is wholeness, the universe, and the cosmos. When you get to 9, you're starting a new cycle. So it's a belief that you've completed 1 soul cycle, so to speak, and now you're starting new. The triangle is always thought. It's how the cosmos experiences itself. The cosmos, God, the universe was intact. It wanted to create something, and then it created, let's say, humans that are now the number 6. That is the hexagon, that is this funky diagram inside of the enneagram, and it has to do with the body. So now we have the soul or the spirit, we've got the triangle, which is the mind, and then we have the body. So this tool is a mind, body, spirit, whole mystical, spiritual growth tool. So Galileo Galilei said, the universe cannot be read until we have learned the language and become familiar with the characters in which it is written. It is written in mathematical language. The letters are triangles, circles, and other geometrical figures. So what I call the 4+, square, rectangle, octagon, hexagon, heptagon, without which means it is humanly impossible to comprehend a single word. Many people feel lost in the world. Many people feel that they're not guided. If you've left a cult or religion like me, maybe you went into an existential crisis. The numbers of the universe, the mathematics, the sacred geometry is available to all of us. Whether it's astrology, whether it's tarot, whether it's the enneagram, there is a structure and a pattern and a sacred geometry to you, to your thoughts, to your body, to your soul. So this is an example of sacred geometry in nature. Fibonacci spiral and the golden ratio are oftentimes used interchangeably. They're a bit different, but what they do is they give the symmetry of nature. So this beautiful flower has this symmetry and it has a pattern. So does our soul. We too respond and correspond to a number pattern, to a symmetry, to a golden ratio, and a growth spiral. All spiritual growth is spherical and spiral. There's no such thing as hierarchy in the actual universe. That's why anything that is a square, rectangle, octagon, heptagon with these rigid sides is always linked to the body. And anything that is rigid, square, straight line will die. So that's one of the important distinctions of why those actual points on the Enneagram correspond to physicality or desires or those low-level consciousness that's housed in the body. So a little astronomy, astrology. Every 20 years, the planet Jupiter and the planet Saturn meet. The number 20 is a very mystical number. It was the years that Odysseus was also gone, going to the Trojan War and coming back. It also is a number that represents the waiting period. So what happens is the younger we are, the less time we've had to sort of calculate our mathematics and our sacred geometry. So the older we get, the easier, because we have more of a thread or a string to pull. So every 20 years, these two planets meet. What does that mean? Jupiter, that represents spiritual growth, Saturn, that represents limitations and karma and alchemy, meet one another. So alchemy, what we burn, what karma we burn, and our spiritual growth are obviously very related. In mythology, Jupiter dethroned Saturn. The good news is that in the heavens, in our midst, in our collective unconscious, our spiritual growth, or the roundness of Jupiter, the sacred geometry of the spherical and the circular, wins the rigidity of Saturn. I don't have the glyphs here, I'm sorry for that, but the Jupiter glyph has a curvature and the Saturn has a cross. So again, it goes to the curvature of the spherical or the circular, which is soul, and Saturn, which is a cross, which is more of these angulars, that is the hectagon. So Jupiter overtakes Saturn in its orbit. 12, which is how many years Jupiter takes to go around the zodiac. 7, which is a Saturn cycle. Every 7 years, we have what I call a skinny cow or a Saturn cycle. The 12 minus 7 equals 5. 5 is linked to the Fibonacci number. 5 is linked to the spherical and circular curvature of like fruit and growth, which again is linked to the circle, which is our soul. This is how we learn free will to individuate and get spiritual growth. So it's already found in the numbers by virtue of just living out multiple years, multiple threads of numbers, you're going to have the opportunity to grow. So numbers dictate, but you choose. And this is super important. You're going to have an opportunity to use your numbers for 2022 in 3 different ways. The first one is just calculating your number. That's going to be the energy of your year. It's unchangeable. It's going to happen. That's sort of just you living willy-nilly, not really deciding to do anything further. The other two is a choice, is you actually actively getting involved with your number pattern, looking up threads and choosing free will, choosing to use your fire appropriately, choosing soul's growth. Spirituality is a choice. Every day you wake up, you decide, today I'm going to work on my spirit, the same way if you decide you're going to work on your body or your mind. There is no difference. Now, are we guaranteed a little bit of growth in a lifetime? Absolutely. The numbers will live out, just like we're going to age physically and our body's going to wither and die. Our mind, just by virtue of experience, we might change some thoughts and perceptions about things, and our soul as well will be gifted a little bit of growth because just the numbers dictate. But how big a growth you want, you choose. That is an active choice to decide, I am going to work on my soul, and I'll explain how to use the numbers for that. So what are the number meanings? When you calculate your year number, for instance, I'm in a 5, I'm in a growth year. So if you're in a 1 year, it's going to be about beginnings. If you're in a 2 year, it's going to be about harmony. If you're in a 3 year, it's going to be about change. So this is the mental energy of Rajas, which is action. If you're in a 4 year, it's going to be about crisis and construction. If you're in a 5 year, you're going to be about growth. In a 6 year, it's going to be about resistance, stagnation, stability, linked to the mental energy, tamas, which might make you feel that you're just here being and not doing much. The 7 years about going inward and introspection. 8 years about power. It could be about getting a position of power or owning your power. And then a 9 years endings linked to the mental energy of sattva, which is sort of a balance of what happened previously in here where you acted and here where you were stable. This sort of wraps that up. So the endings wrap up the whole year, and then the following year you're back to a 1. These are in chronological order. I am in a 5 year now. Next year I'm in a 6, the following in a 7, and you'll see that. If you only understand your number of the year, this is the slide that's pertinent. If you want to do deeper soul work, then we'll get into a little bit more of the number pattern in a moment. So this is the mathematical sequence: 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1. This is how to use the enneagram mystically. This is to start to track your patterns. So for instance, I'm in a 5 year now of growth. I need to go back to my previous 8 year to see what power I took over, I overdid, I gained, self-worth, self-love, whatever power, whether it's inner power, outer power, is now reflected in the growth that I am getting back. What you buy at the store today is what you're going to eat for dinner tomorrow. For soul work, it's the exact same thing. You have to go back. So when you calculate your numbers, if you happen to fall in one of these numbers, it is going to be directly linked to doing shadow work. If you're choosing to do more spiritual soul work, shadow work, looking at your desires, looking at the deadly sins, and seeing what you bought at the store the previous cycle that now you're eating for dinner metaphorically in this cycle. If not, you can simply stay with the slide I showed earlier, which is what your year means. This is if you want to go a little deeper. So you'll see this sequence again, and I'll cover that more. So every year, and this is whether you want to do deeper work or you just want to know what's happening at that normal level of numbers, every year is an opportunity to confront one of your Hydra heads or your deadly sins, vices, passions. It's said in many ways. So I'm in a 5 year because it's a growth year. Obviously, avarice or greed is going to be the shadow or the Hydra head that I want to look at confronting. So if you just want to know your number from your birthday, which we'll calculate momentarily, and you want to do a little shadow work, these are the opportunities to know what's going to happen this year and the shadow work that you can start to consciously pay attention to. You want to go deeper into your soul's work and find the thread from the previous years, which is sort of what you're eating today, what you planted yesterday, then you can decide to do that. So let's get into calculating your numbers. Your story is sacred geometry and has a pattern. Your story is a symbol, which is your life. I study symbol and myth and patterns and universal laws for a living. Just like the flower I showed you has a pattern, so does your soul. When I read the Akashic records or I do shamanic work, my hands read the energy. I close my eyes and my hands become the eyes. I'm reading an energetic pattern of choices that a client has chosen lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So you at any point could choose. That's why I said the numbers dictate, but you get to choose. So if I'm reading someone's energy pattern, it is rooted in these numbers, whether it shows up in the records or not. This is the way for you to mathematically and logically see it. The same thing that I do in the records. I can read a pattern and they ask a question about making a choice. There are two roads: to follow what you've always done, which is perhaps unconscious, not really understanding that you're choosing subconsciously, or making an active choice to do something different. And we have that free will. So your pattern is a pattern, but you at any point can choose to work in a higher vibration. So how do you calculate your number? And this is going to be for the 3 activities that I give you. You're first going to calculate the year. We're all in 2022, so everybody's going to have a 6. It's 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. Then you're going to take your birth month. Mine is March, so 0 plus 3 is 3. And then you're going to take your birthday. Mine is the 14th of March. 1 plus 4 is 5. So now you're going to add 6 plus 3 plus 5 equals 14. 1 plus 4 is 5, always breaking it down. Pythagoras 1 to 9, and you're in a 5 year. This is my year. So everyone's going to have 2022. Just substitute your birthday and your birth month and bring it down to one number between 1 and 9. When you add 1 plus 4, like here, you get a 5. Now, my birthday is in March. The energy's probably going to start shifting the closer I get to my birthday, but you can calculate your number on January 1st. So once you calculate, just kind of pay attention to that energy starts to shift the closer you get to your birthday. So if your birthday is like October or November, then you may not really feel the effects because you're still in the previous year until it gets closer to your birthday. But that's fine. It's just a pattern. These things aren't exact. They're energies. So that's how you get your number. Now, if you only want to work on the basics, then simply go here and find the meaning of the number. The year is going to lead you in that direction. There's not anything to do. It's just you kind of going with the energetic flow, like the seasons, the law of rhythm. You want to do a little bit more work, then find your Hydra head or your deadly sin on the list, link to the number, and you can pay attention or go maybe a little deeper into your soul's work this year, confronting that aspect of yourself. So that's the first layer. That's the most passive layer, but it's still useful. The more in-depth layer is tracking your numbers that has to do with the mathematical code. So what I recommend is number a paper 1 to 9. Number 1 is your birth year. I was born in 1973. In 1974, I was 2. In 1975, I was 3. Now, it always is your birth year, and you start at 1. And I know that this is some of the shifts sometimes, because if you're 73 in November, let's say, well, you're not 1 until 74. That's why you have to work with the energy. But trust me, your year of birth is 1. The next is 2. The following is 3. And track this up until 9 years old. Once you have 1 to 9, those first 9 years, you've laid the foundation for the rest of what your lifetime will be. You may or may not remember what happened in those years. Maybe someone died, there was a brother or sister, you moved countries, you moved schools, you had an illness. There's something marked you're going to identify. But most people 1 to 9, they're not necessarily really sure big things that happen. That's okay. Now, this is where the 20 years comes into play. The more years you have, the easier it's going to be to track. Okay, so I tracked this out all the way to 2026, even though we're only at 2022. I wanted the symmetry of the model. So 1 to 9, then I was 10 in 1982, then I was 20 in 1991, and so forth. So I am currently in a 5-year, here it is, 2022. Once you draw out your grid, you're going to have the number sequence here, just in order, regular number 1 to 9. This is the number sequence of mathematics in the universe of the years in which you're going to do more deeper spiritual work. Since I am in a 5-year, I have to go back to see what I bought at the store at an 8-year, because now is when I'm eating for dinner. So for instance, the metaphor, 2022 is today. I go back to the previous 2016, which is an 8-year. So you're always going back 7 years. And 7, I told you, is linked to karma, alchemy, Saturn. And the growth pattern is Jupiter, Saturn, Jupiter, Saturn. Don't worry about Jupiter. So here is where I am at now, 2022, and I have to go back as per the code to 8. If I were in an 8-year, I'd go back to a 2. If I was in a 2-year, I'd go back to a 4. And if I was in a 4-year, I'd go back to a 1. And this is how you can go. You can go as far back as you want, or in my case, I'm just going back to the 8. I got Cancer in 2016 in a power year. I did write a book about learning to own my power. And now in 2022, I opened a school. I'm teaching these classes. I'm growing my practice based on that book. Also at the earthly level, because this is something I have to look at myself, what ended up teaching me the lesson of Cancer, what was it? Perhaps, and I want to bring it, let's say if it was physically in my body to take care of myself, do something in the body. So you can look at it from the mind, body, spirit perspective, not just the body. So find the correlation. So for instance, currently, if you're in any one of these 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, or 7 years, you're in a body year. You're going to go 2022, back to 2016, back to 2010, back to 23, back to 2000. This is going to be your entire pattern. You don't have to do all of it. You can go 1 back only. If you are in a 3 or 6 year, it's going to be more about your consciousness. It's going to be more about your mind. Okay. So if you're in a 3 year, what are you starting? And in the 9 year, what did you end? That relationship. If you're in a 6 year, what did you start at 3 that this year you have to let go and just stabilize? And if you're in a 9 year, you're wrapping up and it's about a soul. Go and look at all of the previous years, but specifically the 3 and the 6. What you started at this point of the triangle, what you let stabilize at this point, and here, how you wrapped it up. So that's how to go deeper. That's how to pull the thread of your sacred geometry of your soul, using the numbers and all of the years to track your pattern. The third thing that you can do is track a theme by the same number year. So let me take you back. Here I'm doing 5 years. So since I'm in a 5 year, I'm going to look at 2022, 2013, 2004, and 1995. So I found a theme in my particular life linked to college. I graduated college in 95. I became the dean of a college in 2004. I ran a college as an academic director in 2013, and I opened my own college in 2022. So 5 year, go back all of the cycles that you can remember, depending on how old you were, with whatever year you're in now. This is the third way that you can use this. So the first one is rather simple in the sense that you're just going to go with the flow of the energy. This one of calculating specifically what thread and what teaching you're learning from previous situation so that you can decide if you want to direct or redirect the energy is deeper soul work. And then tracking the thread is so that you can track future years. So if you do this, in my case, 5, I can also now go ahead and do a year 6. So I know next year what's coming. So those are the 3 ways to calculate the themes in your life. So here's just a synopsis. You can go with the flow, you can go deeper soul work, or you can track every year that you've had for the particular number. So if you are in a 1-4 year, you are going to be in a Rajas mindset. What does that mean? Those are going to be years to work. Those are going to be years to be active. So I told you 1 is beginnings, 4 is crisis and construction, and 2 is harmony and conflict. So you might create a house, let's say a 4, and build a relationship. So you get married, you build a house, you start a new life. That could be one metaphor, one example of a 1-4-2. So if your pattern fell this year in a 1, a 4, or a 2, you're going to use the Rajasic energy, which is to build, to create, to move, to be active. It's linked to the 3 on the triangle. If your number of the year, like mine, that's a 5, is related to an 8, a 5, or a 7, you're just going to be. You're going to be still. Whatever you planted here will come to fruition and show up in this particular year. It's linked to the mind of the number 6, which is more tamas, inertia, just being. And if you are in a number 9, then you're in sattva, you're ending cycles, and it's coming to a head to end so that next year you can start a new beginning. Sometimes it feels that you're wasting time, that tamas, specifically in 8, 5, 7, or 6 years, is negative. There's nothing to do, nothing is moving, my business isn't moving, I'm not finding a partner. There's no such thing as only chronological time. There's also divine time. So there's 2 words for time in the Greek language. Kairos is divine, chronos is earthly time or chronological time. So when I talk to you about Saturn, Saturn is linked to chronos. When I talk to you about Kairos, that's linked to Jupiter. So it may appear that you're not doing anything in the 3rd dimension, but the universal mathematical code is building and moving you forward. So don't be stressed on those years that are inertia years or appear to be inertia. So just to wrap up, the number sequence is 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1. It links to the hexagram, and it links to the mathematical code of the universe to get us in the body. It is not uncommon that people that are drawn to spiritual techniques or spirituality have had some sort of trauma, and they want to leave the body because the body is the source of pain and suffering. Since the body houses the desires, the hydra, the vices, the sins, it's another reason we don't want to be embodied. But the entire push for the enneagram and math, a universal sequence to lead us to the body is the only place that we can burn karma, the only place that we can raise consciousness, and the only place that we can do spiritual work. But it isn't true that we want to be out of the body. That is why we incarnate. The numbers 3, 6, 9, and there's a famous quote from Tesla, if you knew the power of 3, 6, 9, you'd have one of the keys of the universe. Every single thing requires 3 energies to be created, moved in the universe. 3, 6, 9, Rajas, Tamas, Sattva. That's why in religion we see Father, Son, Holy Ghost. In science, positive, negative, neutral. In Hinduism, Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma. We see this repeated. Jesus even said, when it is mentioned in my name in 3, it will happen. The metaphysicians that wrote these texts understood this. These are linked to higher dimensions. This is the raising of consciousness. You raise consciousness only in a body when you use free will and make choice and use your fire appropriate and individuate. That is it. That is the only way to go back to the creator and stop the cycle of samsara which is reincarnation, death, rebirth, death, rebirth. So this tool is very mystical in utilizing all of this mathematically, mind, body, spirit, to push us into union back into the cosmos with our creator. So if you're in a Kairos year that appears to be slowing you down, don't worry, you'll catch up, because we're not on chronological time. Our body is, obviously, we're going to die at some point, and there's a clock, but spiritually, you're on Kairos, not Chronos. Thank you.